you so much for being here. And yes, you are the first woman in that Women's Voices series. Yes. And I'm absolutely delighted that you immediately said yes. Like there was no hesitation. I asked, yes, I'll do it. So I loved it. And I'm really honored you're here.
Of course.
Um, so just a little bit of background. Tori has worked as a child protective investigator for DCF, Department of Children and Families, for 3 years. And she specifically dealt with egregious child abuse, sexual abuse below the age of 12, human trafficking, and institutional cases. And before we dive in, I just want to say that this conversation is not supposed to be about any individual cases, about any details of what you've witnessed or heard during your work with the DCF, but it's really about you. It's about your story. And I'm really curious of things like who you were before and how it potentially has changed you, good and bad, different ways in your experiences. And this is your story to tell in whatever way feels true to you. Um, and there's a question I was thinking about because to work in a position like that, that's not something you strive for when you're young. This is usually something suddenly you feel you have a calling for. This is almost, And what called you towards this particular field? Was there a moment or was it more of a slow pull? How did that even happen for you?
Well, Cornelia, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and have an opportunity to share my experiences because I do think that no matter if we're going through like a career transition or career trauma or personal, history of that, I think it's exciting to be able to share. But my journey into the child welfare realm was not by accident. I actually have a pretty insane story. So I was working at a group home. I had always had this passion for like working with youth. And
So when you, sorry to interrupt, but when you said you were working at a group home, a
Mhm.
volunteer, or was that already under the DCF umbrella?
No, this was a institution outside of DCF.
Right.
And this was the job that I actually had taken straight out of college.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was working at this group home. I was quickly rising through the ranks. I was in the manager and training program.
Hmm.
And I would always notice that there were DCF investigators that would come into the facility to chat with the children, whether it was because of investigations that were going on there or maybe investigations that the kids have had been a part of previously.
Right.
And I always thought to myself, like, this is something that I really want to do. Like, I'm really passionate about, you know, being a youth advocate and protecting these
Mm.
kids. And I was in manager training one day and I had no idea how to even get involved in being an investigator.
Right.
And I sat down at the conference table and there was a business card sitting on the table that was flipped upside down. And I flipped the business card over, and sure enough, it was a senior child protective investigator's business card. And I quite literally emailed her my resume, and then
Mm.
I had gotten hired on very shortly thereafter to work for DCF.
How interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so you just knew this is you. You felt called. You felt it attracted you, and it's something you wanted to. Obviously, having started and wanting to dive deeper into get and more into the investigative part.
Mhm.
Um, Tell me about that. You mentioned protection. Um, how important is it for you as a woman to protect and to protect children? Where what does that stir in you? Well, how deep does that feel inside you?
I think that that level of protection is very deeply ingrained in me. I have always felt called to create a voice for those who might be voiceless. And the group home gave me a platform to do that, but the investigative work gave me an opportunity to not only give a platform for a voice, but to actually find the voice for the kids, which was huge.
I really like that. I
Yeah.
really like because you find the voice and then you become the voice because
Yeah,
they don't have one, right?
correct. Or
So yeah,
more
sorry, go ahead.
importantly,
Yeah.
the voice that they have
Hmm.
isn't believed.
Exactly. Yes. Hmm. Not
Yeah.
in their surrounding for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's obviously, and again, and we don't need to go in any details, but I'm sure there are some pretty drastic situations you have come across during your 3 years there. You have heard, read, and seen. And if you take those 3 years together, how would you describe, in a felt sense, what it was like to do this work and then coming home every evening? How did you process? How did you, and I'm saying that because I do have a medical background and I've seen things too, and I know you have as well, that the average human would not see or ever see, and
Mhm.
frankly, sometimes shouldn't see.
Mhm.
And how did you deal with that? Coming home to family, friends, whatever your life was at the time.
So I think I was so young when I was doing this job that I didn't have a concept of dealing with work, dealing with the trauma that I really experienced during the day to day. So I think it wasn't until that had all compiled and I was left with what felt for me like just I felt emotionless. I was very disconnected. My mental health was not great, just to be
Mhm.
fully transparent. And I think it wasn't until I had that realization that something needed to change. And I think another big realization for me was um, a part of the job was I investigated child death. And there was a day where two infants had passed away from co-sleeping
Mm.
in the same day, and I was on call. I will never forget it. And my manager called me the first time. She said, "You're getting this case." She called me again and she said, "You'll never believe this, but you're getting another one." And I remember driving home and I called I'm like feeling the emotions like coming back up, but I remember calling my dad on the phone and he
Mm.
was enjoying like a game night with his friends.
Right.
And I called and I just broke down in tears. And the way that I explained it was like, I'm the one taking on these two families' grief. And I just, at the time I was so young, I didn't know how to process that. And that
Mm.
was another big turning point for me. Looking back, also understanding my spiritual journey, I do have a tendency to take on other people's like energy and their grief. And, um, it's again going back to like giving them a voice. Like those babies didn't have a voice. So, just really those two moments were very key indicators for me. Like it's probably time to really address like your own emotional well-being.
Yeah, I mean, uh, um, uh, child's death is just one of those so unnatural
Hmm.
um, episodes that can happen. And I was going to ask you, was there a point where you noticed yourself changing? Would that be that some kind of maybe while you were working there, that turning point with that specific situation? Would you say that was something really happened to you on a deeper level?
I actually think that the deaths that I experienced that day
Yeah,
woke me up. I think because those happened after I had been with the department for some time.
right.
But up until then, I had just fallen into this like day-to-day normalcy. It's almost like I became so desensitized to all of the trauma that it was normal.
Mhm.
The that death experience that I had really woke me.
Shook you,
Yeah.
right? It really shook you. Um, so when you say it woke you up, would you say, or is it correct to say it woke you up to yourself?
I think it did, but it did not wake me up to like the good parts of myself. I think it made me aware of a lot of like suppressed emotions that I was
Right,
just kind of writing off.
right. So yeah, I mean, how when the realization when that set in and you the unpressed emotions arise and your nervous system that's either potentially gone into a freeze mode or kind of shut down or um, do you think your sensitivity during that time was affected? And I don't mean your sensitivity towards your job, I mean
Mhm.
your sensitivity overall in your life.
Oh, that's a great question. I think yes, I do. I think so because I am unfazed by a lot of things still to this day. So like um for example, when there is an emergency going on,
Mhm.
you will never find me chaotic. I am always very matter of fact, but almost emotionless
Mm.
throughout the event. And I do think that the experience as an investigator impacted that for sure.
Right. Um, which is not necessarily a bad capacity to hold because in an emergency, the last thing you need is somebody who is dramatic and doesn't
Mhm.
function. That
Mhm.
can actually be quite dangerous. So you do actually want that person who is able to control and, emotionally like that, and then process the emotions afterwards, when there's time and
Mhm.
space, of course. Um, if you would, if that period of your life, if you condense those 3 years and you would have to give it a color or a texture or some kind of pattern, what would that be when you look back on it now?
Oh, that's an
What's the
interesting.
first what's the first thing that comes to mind?
From a pattern perspective, I would definitely say more jagged,
Mm-hmm.
more like more of like an informal, like jagged pattern.
Yeah.
And I also think that that jagged pattern represents a lot of peaks and valleys in
Mm-hmm.
in that career as well. From a color perspective, I would say probably yellow, maybe. Yep. like yellow is what's resonating with me the most.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that's
That's okay.
what I would.
Um, During those 3 years, did you notice a difference in your sleeping patterns, for example? Was that a time you had difficult time to sleep? Did you, or less sleep, or did you sleep good like always? I mean, just as an example, with regard to your nervous system being riled up many times during this period.
So, as part of the job, if you had, for example, like if you had to remove a child from a home, you were responsible for going to court the next day. And that could mean that you're up all night writing legal documentation.
Wow.
So there were a lot of times when I would be up writing documentation, or I would be up with literally babies in my arms in the office waiting for foster home placement. So it's not, there were a lot of times when I didn't have a choice, but then I think the times where I did have an opportunity to depart from work at normal business hours, you still go home and you worry.
Of course.
You
It's
know,
it's
like
you can't just go home and not think about it.
correct.
It's there, especially certain. I mean, some cases may be easier, but certain situations, certain things, they stay with you.
Mhm. Most definitely.
And because they need processing, it's like what just happened, you
Mhm.
know. Um, when you look back on that period in life, what do you wish somebody would have told you when you started? Um, not so much about the job, but some kind of advice
Mhm.
how to carry and process it that you know now or that you've learned now and what you didn't know back then.
I think for me, I wish the advice that I would have given myself is from an energetic perspective. I would have reminded myself of like energetic hygiene and also just reminding myself that I was doing everything in my capacity to make sure that these kids were safe with the tools that I was handed. I also think that when we were being onboarded as an investigator, they don't talk about your mental health. They don't teach you coping mechanisms. You know, they don't
There's
teach.
no decompression time. It's just one case after the other. Yeah.
And you're constantly in the car driving from point A to B to C. And a lot of times your decompression is driving in the car thinking to yourself like, holy shit, what did I just see? And then it's like you get a text from your supervisor and you're on to the next one.
On to the next one. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, yeah, I
And
think,
it's brutal. It's very brutal.
yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot.
And what actually was it that led you to the decision to step away from it? When did you say, "Okay, this was this was good for what it was, but yeah, I'm done. I need to remove myself from this now."
Mhm.
Was that a specific incident again? Was it around what you already mentioned earlier, or because you said that was more towards the end of your career, the situation with the two babies?
The situation was with the two babies was about, I would say like 8 to 10 months before I transitioned to a different role.
Right.
But I think what really pushed me was how, like prior to working for DCF, I was this bright, healthy young woman.
Mm.
And I watched myself diminish. I became so unhealthy that I had to make a change or I was gonna sacrifice my life for it if I
Mm.
didn't. And the career change that I made was another one that just was easy. It
Right.
came to me so easy, it was a no-brainer. Um, and the
So it
cool
was
thing,
almost coming your way. Take
yeah.
me.
But the really cool part of it was I was still so passionate about like advocacy and working in that space. I actually became a case manager trainer afterwards. So I was
Interesting.
actually able to like shed light on other case managers, give them my experience, my take on it, and try to help mentor some of them as they move their career forwards.
That is awesome. That so you obviously addressed some issues with them that were not addressed with you. For example, watch
Hmm.
your mental health, stay
Yep.
healthy, keep yourself healthy, think of yourself. Um, what do you think you had to grieve or release or make peace with in order to really leave that chapter of your life behind?
I think just understanding that the only reason that I was around those circumstances was because of my career,
Mhm.
and that wasn't my day-to-day reality.
Mhm.
And I think after I was able to like separate those things, that really helped out a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Mhm.
How long did it take you, would you say? Roughly. I mean, was it like a 6 month or a couple of years or
I would say it took me a couple of years.
Mhm.
That the stories, the trauma, like it just doesn't leave you. And then, after the couple of years, you look back and you're like, what the heck was that?
Mm.
And you think to yourself, like, I cannot believe I was in those circumstances. Um, there was an incident where I had a parent point loaded like a gun at me, and law enforcement wasn't present. And I think back to myself, like, I went home, I got back in my car, I went home that day like nothing happened. And I still to this day, that bothers me, I think.
I think that's a really tough one to reconcile with.
Hmm.
Um, I think that might bother you always a little
Hmm.
bit or for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can say as well in my background, my medical background, having worked in hospitals, I have seen the worst depravity in
Hmm.
humanity. I wouldn't want anybody else to see, to be
Hmm.
honest. So I understand where you're coming from.
Hmm.
But I've also seen divine,
Hmm.
incredible, beautiful things at the same time. Um, and I want to ask you, how did that time change your belief and maybe opened up your compassion and your own resilience towards life, towards people, towards yourself? Is there something you want to share about that?
To be honest, during that time period when I was really heavy into the investigative work,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it actually hindered my ability to see the positive in humanity. I was unable to, I really didn't feel like I was resilient during that time frame.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, that's kind of natural.
Yeah. I think looking back,
Yeah, it's something usually what happens afterwards.
yeah, looking back, I'm just, it's a catch-22 because I am grateful that I had the wake-up call that I did and was able
Right.
to myself, but I don't think if I don't think I would do it again if I had the opportunity. Because I do think it took me a while to recover from the experiences.
So if you'd have a friend, for example, who's really, God, Tori, I really want to do this. Tell me about it. I really want to get into this child investigator. What would you tell her? Do it or don't do it, or be careful.
Tread lightly.
Don't overdo it.
I would just say, have a great toolkit and have boundaries.
So important.
Mhm.
Tori, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you sharing what you shared today, and I really appreciate your honesty and your authenticity. So
Of
thank you,
course.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And this goes to everybody out there. If you have a story that you would like to share publicly on this channel, I would love to hear from you. You can go on my website, corneliagilbert.com. You can just book a 15 minutes connection call with me, and we can just explore whether that's the right space for you and whether it's the right thing to share. I really appreciate. Thank you for watching. Thank you for this conversation. And remember, if it resonated with you, subscribe, like, and all the good stuff, or share it with someone who you think might benefit from it. And until next time, keep listening, keep sharing, and remember, always remember, never forget that your voice has a power to make a difference.